Churchill's Secret Army. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is A Call to Spy. Hello and welcome back to the Spy-Fi guys, where we cover spy fact, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Zach.
And I'm Christian.
And last year was the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, I believe. Last year, 2021.
Yes, that is correct.
Unfortunately, we were doing our Swinging 60s Spy Summer at the time, so we did not cover it. But this year, we thought that we would do a special multi-part series about the D-Day invasion and some of the spy craft that circulated around it.
Yeah, so today we are covering A Call to Spy, which is in part about in a very small part about the lead up to D-Day, but is really about three female spies during World War II who don't really get that much attention.
I would say very little attention. I would say they're pretty much footnotes of history, even though they deserved more than that. Oh yes, I'm sorry, I wanted to correct myself from earlier. Last year was the 77th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, not the 75th.
So this would be the 78th, but, we didn't want to wait a whole 2 other years before we cover this movie.
That's right. So our first part is A Call to Spy. I must say that is not the most exciting title in the world or descriptive about what the movie actually contains.
Fair, but I mean, looking back through all of our other movies we've covered, not all of them have the most, catchy titles. Like, what was the one about the Howling Commando? Not Howling Commandos, the Ian Fleming's Commandos.
Age of Heroes.
See, that's not any better.
Yeah, that tells you nothing. But this tells you what you need to know, which is that it is a spy movie and it has spies in it.
Mm-hmm. So, do you want to give us the IMDb plot synopsis?
Here we go. In the beginning of World War II, with Britain becoming desperate, Churchill orders his new spy agency, SOE, to recruit and train women as spies.
All right, so we start off with this big block of text about the creation of the SOE. As you said, it was formed by Winston Churchill. It stands for the Strategic Operation Executive.
That's right. And also in the opening, it's an IFC production.
Okay.
Like The Catcher Was a Spy, an independent film channel. It's also produced by Spyscape.
Really?
I did not.
As in the museum in New York?
I don't know. I probably should have looked it up. Let me do it now. Yes, Spyscape launches content division, hires Film Nation's producer Alison Silver to run it.
Interesting.
Yes.
Because I know they've sort of done a dive into podcasting. They have their own podcast series, True Spies, which is, fairly interesting. And They did send me a nice, towards the beginning of the pandemic, they sent me a nice gift bag full of all sorts of Spyscape stuff. So, and they're a very interesting museum.
Yes, we've been to a couple good spy museums in our time.
Yes.
I went to the one in Berlin, you went to Spyscape.
All right. And of course, the International Spy Museum.
Of course,
our friends. Anyways, to this movie.
The movie also says it's inspired by true stories, which is a new one. But I will say my rage about inspired by a true story has dimmed the more of it that I see. I'm starting to get over it.
Good, because we cover a lot of, half of our movies are going to have some variation on that phrasing.
That's right.
So we start, after the block of text, we start in August 1941. There's a woman being held by armed guards. She gets tortured by, having her head shoved underwater. I noticed that she was American, had an American accent, and they're demanding what her name is. She says it's Bridget, and they, keep torturing her, and they demand it again, and she, states, no, that's my name, and then the lights go on, and we cut to 3 months earlier. At a building where the sign outside says the Inter-Service Research Bureau.
Is that significant to you?
No, it's just one of those vague names that could mean absolutely anything and nothing at the same time. So it's obviously a cover.
Right, of course, obviously.
It is actually the SOE headquarters, specifically F section. There's a man at the window who looked vaguely familiar to me, and then when I saw his name pop up in the credits, I was, it's Thomas Wayne from Batman Begins.
That's right. Even though Thomas Wayne really isn't in Batman Begins very long, he is distinctive looking, such that you remember him later.
What's this actor's name? I forget already.
I do not remember.
So he's at the window. There's a report on how far the Nazis have taken over France.
Hmm.
and we follow a woman in a hat who goes into the building, going up the stairs. I see there's a big giant poster of "Remember, the enemy is listening," which I noticed.
Hmm.
And back at that window, another man comes into the room. He tells his seemingly his boss. He told the family of these dead agents that there was a car crash, which reminded me of Mission Impossible 3.
That's right. That's right.
When apparently these agents had only been, undercover for 6 weeks, and there was some sort of slip up. And the slip up was that one of the agents was carrying British cigarettes, which you wouldn't have in occupied France.
What do you mean they wouldn't? I didn't see that as a huge mistake. What if they just like British cigarettes?
Where would they have gotten them from?
Maybe they had some in their basement because they liked it.
No, that's if it requires that much explanation, it's
Then
gonna
they're not going
require
to
more,
buy it.
then they're not gonna buy it. No, no.
In that case, it is a pretty bad mistake.
Yeah, yeah. We find out that the woman is Vera Atkins, and the two men who are waiting for her, the guy at the window, Thomas Wayne, is Buckmaster. I don't remember what his first name was.
Hmm.
Maurice Buckmaster, apparently.
Hmm.
Never would have gotten that. And I think the other guy, we don't actually hear the other guy's name, but I think it's Christopher.
Okay.
So they are in charge of F section, and they're putting Vera in charge of recruiting ladies to be
Hmm.
in the SOE. Vera wants to train them like the men, but of course, the men are resistant to this. It's like, no, you can't train women the way we train them.
I actually thought there would be more opposition to women spies in the movie.
Hmm.
I thought that would be a major plot point.
I mean, there's enough. I don't, and I'm glad they didn't belabor the point.
That's fine. And then another observation I had about this scene is someone says, make sure they're pretty.
Yep, I've got that in my notes too.
Which I thought was interesting because harkening back to The Spy Who Came In from the Cold,
Oh,
one of the points that Le Carre
oh,
makes in the book is that spies aren't supposed to stand out.
right.
They're supposed to be invisible. They're supposed to be just a face in the crowd. So you'd
Yeah,
think, if anything, they would want the spies to be normal looking.
yeah. I don't think he was thinking about operational security.
No, it's not operational security.
No,
It's
I think he was just thinking, oh well, if I have to be around them, make sure they're pretty faces that I can be around.
yeah, that seems like a in like Flint kind of situation.
Yeah, well, I didn't so much care for. I think that was Christopher who said that.
Hmm. Well, I thought maybe the indication was they were going to use them for honeypotting, but my uninformed opinion is that honeypotting doesn't happen as much in the real world as it does in the movies.
Unless you're Russia, yeah.
Right, which these guys are not.
No, no. Vera goes recruiting. We see her meeting with Noor Inyat Khan,
Hmm.
who is a wireless operator in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force.
Yes, that's right.
And then we cut over to the U.S. Embassy, where we see a woman, on a bike. This is Virginia Hall.
Hmm.
She is seemingly a typist, and we see her get a rejection letter from the State Department because she wants to be a diplomat.
Yeah, this reminded me of Steve Carell and Get Smart wanting to be a field agent and getting rejected constantly.
So her friend, is saying, you look like you need a drink, come to a party.
Mm.
And so there's this big dinner party where Virginia and Vera are both there, and they meet. And Vera sizes her up and realizes she could be an asset.
Hmm.
Virginia, the next day, is trying to write to FDR about her rejection, and is
Yeah.
oh, that's what this reminded me of, the Imitation Game, where Turing writes to Churchill and says, "Hey, put me in charge." But it doesn't seem like she actually goes through with sending the letter.
First of all, there's a lot of things that remind me of the Imitation Game in this movie. More
Mhm.
about that later. I think there's an anachronism in this scene when she says, "You of all people should understand what it's like to have a disability."
So we'll get to that in Spy Fact versus Fiction.
Okay. I'm just going to
But
say
yes,
my
I thought
uninformed
about it.
opinion
I thought
now,
about it.
which is that my understanding was that was a secret from the public. And I know she's not the public. She's gotten in, but still.
I also thought about it, but we'll get to it in Spy Fact versus Fiction.
Hmm.
The other thing I noticed is she's got a big giant copy of A Farewell to Arms on her table.
Hmm.
And we heard mentioned earlier that she, was an ambulance driver in France, which actually reminded me about Hemingway being an ambulance in World War One. So I wonder if she had inspiration from Hemingway in that case. Also, this is the first time we see Virginia's wooden leg.
That's right.
And she takes it off and she is like upset about it because, she thinks that that's the only thing that's preventing her from being a diplomat. So the next day, Virginia goes to Vera's office. Vera wants her backstory. We learn that she wanted to be a diplomat. She knows several languages. Apparently, her ex left because of her leg.
It's all about the leg.
Uh-huh.
She's like, inevitably, someone will always ask me about the leg.
Yeah. Which it's not the whole leg. It's actually just, below the knee.
Right.
Yeah.
Vera is also asking, why aren't you married? And I think there's a part where she says, what are you, gay? Not in so many words, of course.
I didn't remember that. Okay.
I think she says something along the lines of like, what are you? You are into men, aren't you? Or something like that.
I don't remember that at all, but okay. After all this, Vera invites Virginia to be part of the SOE.
Just like that.
And next, we get Vera's interview with Noor. We find out that she is the best wireless operator in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. She attributes it to her harp and piano playing because operating wireless requires rhythm, and she has good rhythm.
Yeah, Noor's backstory is crazy. She's
Right?
British,
I didn't know any about this.
Indian. She's from Russia and lived in France.
Also, her mother is American.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
So that's a whole lot of things, yeah. She wants to join so she can play her part. She feels that, maybe if, there's a Muslim Indian woman who achieves great renown, they could do something to help heal, Christian-Indian relations.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to a Scottish country house training facility for the SOE, or the,
Office of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Thank you. That's the one.
Which I had heard before. Yeah.
I've heard that before too. I have ungentlemanly warfare down here. I didn't have the office part. I was like, wait, there's something of a ungentlemanly warfare. Everyone gets a code name, but they're not supposed to give anyone their real names.
Right.
And their job is to acquire information and build resistance.
That's right.
And there's only, so far as I noticed, only 2 women in this training class, which is just Noor and Virginia.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a part where someone says something unfriendly to them, like we don't want you there.
Well, it's more of a can you really do this kind of thing. So there is an undercurrent of everyone underestimating the women.
That's right.
But yeah, so there's a part where, so here's the thing. So they're all supposed to have code names, but at one point Vera during the training calls Noor over by her name.
Yeah, it's a movie. I'm willing to let that go because people slip up.
But yeah, she is told to do this particular exercise and show the men how to do things.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part where there's a whole training montage. Virginia falls down during one of the training things due to her leg. And Noor, shows up another recruit in her knowledge of how to operate the wireless and all its parts. There's a cool part where they're demonstrating knife work. Maybe they're using a Fairbairn Sykes knife, like in Age of Heroes. I don't know. It just looked, I don't know what kind of knife it was. Showing all the vital areas to, stab and slice a body.
Yeah.
Back in their shared room, because of course they have to share a room because there's no other women. Noor is like showing how heavy her radio case is, and she says she's going to be a terrible spy because she can't lie and she can barely pick up her wireless case. She's sort of questioning her place there. We find out that Virginia named her leg Cuthbert, which of course made me think of your brother.
Yes, well, my brother Matt uses his screen name on Discord. It's actually from the Dungeons and Dragons god, not the saint. So in the old 3rd edition of Dungeons and Dragons that we played in high school, one of the gods was Saint Cuthbert.
Interesting.
But this god, or rather this saint, I should say, is a soldier and healer. That's why she named her leg after him. And the way she explains it, she says, he's going to be with me all my life, so I might as well name him.
Mm-hmm.
Which, when you think about it, makes total sense.
Oh, yeah.
Do you name your car?
I have in the past.
I never have.
I'm trying to remember what I did. Oh, yeah.
But I know some people name their cars.
My last car was like an indeterminate color to different people. It could either look silver, gold, or taupe.
Mm-hmm.
So it was either the silver screecher or the taupe terror.
There's the old joke, what do you call your car? And then the answer is a bunch of nasty names when it breaks down.
That's good. We get Vera back at headquarters is being admonished by Buckmaster about Noor because he doesn't think she'll last. They think she won't even last like 6 weeks. Vera makes her arguments about how she picks up wireless very quickly and can transmit very quickly.
Mhm.
So they're like, all right, we'll think about her. And then they turn to assessing Virginia. She's got really good marks. They said they're going to set her up with a cover as a journalist
Mhm.
since she's American. So say she's a journalist from the New York Times. But then they discover the wooden leg.
Oh,
And
they
of course,
didn't. It's funny they didn't notice
right?
it
How
before
did
this.
yeah. But Vera says it's a perfect cover because no one, will suspect that a woman with a wooden leg is going to actually be a spy.
And you can hide stuff in it.
Yeah. So they say, okay, progress her to the next level. And this is where we catch up to the beginning. Virginia was Bridget.
Right.
And of course, it was all a test.
Mhm.
Vera brings her a towel, says she's impressed. And this is where Virginia gets to meet Buckmaster and says that she'll be the first female agent to be on the ground. She's got basically 50-50 odds of survival. And she says, welcome to the Baker Street Irregulars.
Yes,
Did you get that reference?
a reference to Sherlock Holmes and his homeless population that tell him stuff.
Also, apparently their like headquarters was on Baker Street, so that makes perfect sense. Like you see
Yeah,
a
that
sign
makes a lot
later
more
on.
sense.
So Vera gives Virginia her mission. She's supposed to set up a hub in France to support the resistance and give them whatever they need: safe houses, money, transport.
Yeah, it sounds great, but really it's a support role. It's helping the men do the real stuff.
I mean, I feel like
I guess
no.
you can look at it in a more negative way if you want. Another way you can look at it is they can't function without her.
Yeah, no, she's vital, and also pretty much every other SOE agent is doing the exact same role.
Yeah.
They are not the ones like. Also, even just in general, like nowadays. Wow, I don't know how they're operating nowadays, but in the days that I've read about in the CIA, a case officer is doing basically this job.
Mhm.
They are not the ones stealing the secrets. They are recruiting other people to steal those secrets.
Typically, yes. Though
Yeah,
in this case, they're also doing sabotage, which they would have the French do it because the
right.
French know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't see it as a support job. I see it as a very vital job.
Hmm.
And I'm sure she did too. As Vera's giving Virginia the mission, she's checking her clothing tags. They're American, so that makes sense because her cover as an American journalist.
Yep.
She also is hiding money like in like straps around her waist. And Vera gives Virginia pills for pain, which will also help her keep going. Do you have an idea what these pills are supposed to be?
I think it was amphetamines, they said, was the ones that
Okay,
help her
I
keep
didn't catch that.
going.
That makes sense.
It stands out on my memory because today's the wrong day to quit amphetamines, like from Airplane.
Uh,
Then, of course, she also gives her the suicide pill.
yeah, of course, your cyanide. So she arrives in Lyon in September of 1941. We get a little montage of her arriving. We also get voiceover from Vera telling her to watch her back, even in the unoccupied zone. Her contact is Dr. Chavon,
Hmm.
and she gives her a French code phrase, which was, what was it? It was basically saying, I'm a new patient.
Yeah.
And then the doctor said, oh, for Dr. Chavon? No, for Dr. Benoit.
Yeah, which reminds me of the part, one of my favorite parts in OSS 117, when he picks
Uh,
up the phone, he say his real name. He says, no, his fake name, and then immediately hangs up on them.
no. What is his real name?
Yeah,
His
and if
name,
I could remember the names, that joke would have been a lot better.
what is OSS 117's real name?
Hubert de la Bath is his real name.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we'll work together.
Delabath? No, Flantier.
Yeah. There we go. We did it, everybody.
I remember the code name of Noel Flantier, but I did not remember Hubert Delabath. Anyways.
Someone also tells Virginia to stay detached when they see her giving the old lazy eye to a hot fella. Do you remember this?
I remember her saying stay detached, but I don't remember that it was because of that. I think it was more of just basically don't care about any of your agents because it's going to make it hard.
Yeah, it's open to interpretation.
Anyway, so she finds Dr. Chavon, gives him the code phrase, and we immediately find that there's a situation.
Yeah.
One of Dr. Chavon's friends is hiding a spy who was injured in a parachute landing. One of his legs got wrapped up in his parachute, and he's not going to make it. So Virginia says, I want to see him immediately. So Dr. Chavon drives her to the house, and the owner shows Virginia where he's staying. He's not doing well.
Yeah, it's the classic conversation of, oh my gosh, you're heavily wounded. You need a hospital. No hospitals. The cave. That's from The Dark Knight Returns.
I assumed as much.
Or no hospitals, just any sort of variation on
Uh-huh.
that.
He demands that she send a message to London to get him out, but she says that no, I literally just got here. I don't know where my wireless is, and it might take days for my courier to make contact. So that's interesting to me. So basically, they have a courier who goes between the wireless and the agent,
Yeah.
so that they don't actually make direct contact with him. So that if they get captured,
Mhm.
they won't know where either of the two. So that makes sense. I just never
Sure.
thought about it. Yeah, she does promise the spy that she will get him out. So, as Virginia's walking around Lyon, she notices a pastor on the corner who's preaching against Hitler very loudly. And then we see Virginia sort of getting ready for the day, and there's a knock at the door. It's a young woman who is the courier and gives her the message, gets a meeting location, and is told to bring a newspaper.
Yes.
So she goes to the meet, sits down. A man asks to borrow her newspaper, but before he can, a police officer comes by, very suspicious. Apparently, she had asked for a gin. She landed on Tuesday, but as of Monday, there's a new law that they can't have alcohol on Sundays.
So it seems dumb. Okay, it seems dumb that the police is giving her a hard time because she accidentally ordered alcohol when she wasn't supposed to. But it occurred to me later,
Uh-huh.
it means that she's not from around there.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also obvious from her accent too.
Yeah, but I think that's what drew his attention. Also, I
Yeah.
must say, I like World War II stuff. I like World War II movies, but
All right.
every freaking World War II spy movie has a million scenes just like this of a police officer going up to them, staring them down, looking at the papers, and then letting them go. And they never get exciting.
Yeah.
I do not find them tension filled or interesting.
I was not bothered by it. I mean, I feel like you have to have it.
I know you do. That's the way it worked. That's the way they looked for spies, but it's still pretty dull.
I mean, I feel like if we didn't have it, then you'd be like, wait, how come they're not looking for her? How come they're not suspicious about her?
I think you have one scene. Okay, tell you what, we'll compromise. You do it once,
All right,
and then you move on.
true. And okay, they have this. They have other scenes of it, but it's never a big deal. It's just her showing her papers and going across.
Mm-hmm.
They never make it. This is the only time they make a big deal about it.
Well, there'll be more later, but we'll talk about it.
This is the only one that really caught my attention. Anyway,
I also think it's funny in this part where after the police officer leaves her alone, her contact, Alphonse, puts a butter knife away. The implication being that if the police officer gave her a hard time, he was going to stab him to death with it.
Did you? Well, I mean, I noticed him. Did you not notice him grabbing it in the first place? You just saw him putting it away.
I think I just saw him putting it away.
Oh yeah, I saw him as he's he's getting ready for trouble. I don't know what his plan was. Fair, but that's
it's a good question.
Yeah. So they meet outside and introduce each other themselves. Virginia has a recruiting montage, and we also get a voiceover of her sending messages back to Vera. Apparently, the French laws keep changing.
Mm-hmm.
And also the courier passes along the message about the next plane needing to land because they need to pick up someone. So Buckmaster gets the message from Virginia and tells Vera to get coordinates from Virginia. And as this is all happening, we also see a brief scene of Noor, practicing on her wireless. Basically, I think it's just to, remind the audience, oh, remember this character too is around still?
Yeah, she's one of the Trinity.
This part is, very Virginia heavy.
Yeah, she needs some screen time too.
Yeah. We have a scene of Virginia passing a checkpoint. I think the tension here came not from the checkpoint, but from when she looked down as she's crossing the bridge and sees bodies in the stream.
Mm-hmm. That was a war.
Yeah. So as she, goes, she finds a good landing spot and writes down the coordinates. And she later brings Alphonse, her contact, over to look at it. He says the landing strip's too short, but they'll find a way to deal with it. They'll get a what's Tom Cruise from American
Barry
Made?
Seal.
A Barry Seal pilot to pull off that landing and take off.
I still want to know how he barely did it the first time, how he's able to do it every time since, and we'll never know.
Maybe they cut down a few more trees. I don't know, or just cut the tops off of a few trees.
Yep, check that episode. That episode is American Made. Check that in our history if you're curious. Episode.
Anyways, Alphonse's one stipulation is that the plane can't be on the ground longer than 10 minutes. Virginia says, all right, we'll have her out in 5. Vera receives the intel. Apparently, one of their wireless operators, Mark, was late, and he left off part of his call sign.
What was this like? The call sign? The imitation game again. with the German guy who had his
Oh,
call sign, and that's
yeah.
how they were able to trace the messages and crack the
Right,
code.
yeah, yeah. But Vera's suspicious. It could be a signal that he's compromised. So they make a suggestion. Oh, okay, you could send another wireless operator, but apparently there aren't a lot to choose from. But there's one, Noor.
Yep.
But at this point, Vera is resistant because she hasn't had the final level training, which means the torture part, I guess?
Presumably, yeah. No, she has the nerve to make it through.
Yeah, but Buckmaster says there's no time. Their plane is leaving, so we need to get someone on there.
Mhm.
And as she leaves the room, Buckmaster and Christopher talk, and there's rumors about Vera that she's potentially Jewish and that her family might be from Romania, and this is all very suspicious. But
Yeah,
Buckmaster stands up for her.
her position is tenuous, and
Yeah.
she's easy to suspect
Yeah.
of wrongdoing.
So Noor goes home to see her mother, tells her that she's going abroad, and her mother is like, "Do you have to? You're needed at home." He's like, "No, I've got to do my part."
Yeah, she's answering the call to spy. Get it? Like from the title.
Vera's getting Noor ready, gives her a newspaper and her wireless case, and then Noor notices Vera's pin, which is a lapwing, which is a type of bird,
Mm.
gives it to Noor, and says her code name is going to be Madeline. And then Vera goes home to her mother, who's also American, seemingly. It sounded like her accent was American, but then again, she's supposed to be Romanian, so I don't
I
know.
wouldn't trust the accents too much. This movie was clearly made by Americans. Probably cut some corners there.
Oh yeah, there was a bit. So in the whole conversation between Virginia and Vera in the beginning,
Mhm.
there was also a dropped line about that. I think Vera's boyfriend or lover is missing in action,
Just like Wonder Woman.
and she's staring out the window, and Vera's mother says, "Missing soldiers turn up all the time."
Mhm. Or not.
Yeah. So back on the field, Virginia is waiting for the plane to arrive, and when it does, she's very surprised to see Noor on the plane.
I would be too.
They get the spy on the plane, and Noor is taken to the safe house where the spy was hiding. Virginia continues recruiting. She tries to get some nuns to use a nunnery as a safe house, but their resistance is that they say that, they don't have enough food. They barely have enough to feed the nuns.
Mhm.
And so Virginia says, what if I could procure some extra food coupon? And she says, well, then we might be able to find some space.
The nuns reminded me of The Sound of Music
I mean, of course.
in
Yeah.
every place they appeared.
Yeah. Noor starts to transmit a message out of the house where she was in the basement where she was hiding, and she notices some children playing outside. But then she hears some police come into the house. Apparently, they trace the signal. Noor runs out of the back and hides in another part of the house.
This part was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
What a close call.
So Virginia talks to Dr. Chavon. She says that she needs a place for Noor. And he says, well, I have a basement she can stay in. And he says, budding's changed. You have to do something for me. You should have someone look at your limp. Which then she reveals to him that it's actually a wooden leg. And we find out the whole backstory from it. It was a hunting accident.
Yes.
So she had a loaded shotgun, and she tripped over a branch, and her weapon discharged. Gangrene was going to set in, and they had to amputate it. And someone had to make a decision, but she was unconscious, so the doctor made the decision for her.
I guess the decision is between amputation and dying.
Yeah.
Not much of a choice there.
And then Dr. Chavon quotes Hemingway at her, which we know from the book that she is a fan of Hemingway, and then gives her some soap as a present, which anytime someone gives you soap as a present, that's like, what are you trying to say?
Hey, they're going to use it. Also consider, they mentioned earlier that there's rationing, so maybe
That's
soap is
true.
hard to come by.
But she even says, that bad? Is no, it's not.
It's an obvious joke, sir, but it checks out.
As they're walking back, they pass by some anti-Jewish propaganda. And apparently there are people lined up around the block wanting to see this exhibit.
I thought it was a movie, an anti-Jewish movie.
I couldn't tell. I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Yeah, some European countries really went out of their way to protect their Jews from the Nazis. France wasn't one of them.
Yeah. So Virginia sets up Noor at the doctor's house. As she's setting her up, the pastor who we saw on the street preaching against Hitler talks to the doctor, gives the code phrase, which he somehow got, and says that he wants to see Virginia. Although what was her code name?
Brigitte,
thank you.
Yeah.
Uses the code name. And he says that, there's a double agent in Bordeaux and he needs to build a network.
Yeah.
The pastor says, come back later. I don't know when she might be by. I think she might be in town. And as Virginia overhears all of this, doesn't trust him, but, Dr. Siobhan is like, well, there's an agent or a double agent. This could mean a lot. So, we should act on this. And she says, nope, not until we get him checked out by London.
Did you suspect that this guy was the traitor?
I was suspicious, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I was also a little suspicious. I did think it was weird that the Nazis would allow an anti-Nazi preacher to preach.
Yeah.
Come on. They don't do that. That's like their whole thing is stopping people from
Well,
criticizing them.
We'll get to it. We see a man in uniform watching SOE headquarters, and we find out some of the wireless operators are talking, and apparently British is going to war with Finland, Hungary, and Romania. And of course, it's the part about Romania that gets Vera's attention. Also, we find out the man in the uniform is Buckmaster, and we find out that Vera has been denied her citizenship papers because she's Jewish and Romanian.
Well, they don't say that.
No, they don't say it, but that's the implication.
Belief, yes. And Buckminster reminds her that her position is tenuous.
Mm-hmm.
I think that she actually reminds the audience that her position is tenuous.
Right.
He really likes her, but she's not a citizen.
No.
And could be, I guess, deported at any time, really.
Yeah. Back at her home, Churchill is making a speech on the radio, and Vera turns it off because she's mad at Churchill and, any of the, the upper crust,
management.
basically. Upper management, yeah. And she talks to her mother about how she's worried about being deported anytime there's a knock on the door. And her mother...
Hey, you think you're afraid of a knock on the door, Vera? What about your agents?
I mean, equally?
What is it with doors?
I mean, if she got deported, she'd probably be in as bad a position as them, if not worse.
Yeah, Romania was a bad one in the Holocaust.
At the same time, Virginia is listening to the FDR speech on December 7th, which we covered extensively in our coverage of Pearl Harbor and Tora Tora Tora, in those episodes.
That's right.
And back at SOE headquarters, they're watching the speech, and they realize that Virginia no longer has a good cover because American journalists would, now that they're at war, American journalists would no longer be allowed in France. So she not only needs a new cover, she needs a new code name.
Code name is very important.
Also, they need to transfer a new wireless operator in Paris, and Buckminster says, let's send Noor.
Send our best agent.
Mm-hmm. So Noor and Virginia are, setting up Virginia's new identity. She's got a blonde wig on, and she's supposed to be French now instead of just American. So Noor's helping her practice her accent.
This part was great. It's like one of my favorite parts.
Oh, yeah.
When they say, you have to say bonjour.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. That's what they do in the movie. I don't know if it's correct, but it was really funny.
Yeah. She practices her accent, and
also the father checks out.
Yeah.
The background investigation on him is clear.
So they go their separate ways. Noor takes the train to Paris, and as she's on the train, is it Nazis or is it just the gendarmes? I don't remember who.
It's definitely the Nazis this time. Complete with the SS logo on the collar.
Yes. So they're searching the train. They are taking all the cases, including her case, which of course makes her very worried because it's not actually a case. It's wireless.
It's great. This part's great too. I was like, how is she going to get out of this?
And the way she gets out of it is because they find someone else and they just stop there.
Which is a classic mistake. What if there's two spies? It turns out there were.
Yep. Or at least.
Or an innocent person and a spy.
It also could have just been a Jewish person that they captured.
Yeah, or anyone else of suspicion. Right. That's true. Yeah. So she does make it.
Yeah, she makes it. She gets to Paris. Here's the other thing that we kind of skipped over, but Noor learned quickly after her first, attempt of almost being captured that she shouldn't operate her wireless out of where she's sleeping. So she goes to a different place rather than her safe house to send a message. Says that she'd arrived safely and that Philomene, which is Virginia's new code name, requests more wireless operators.
Yeah, I bet they're going to be hearing that a lot.
Yeah, so Virginia meets with more resistance members and is sending reports back, is, teaching them how to use a gun, says, all right, 2 shots, 1 to the chest, 1 to the head. It's almost a Mozambique drill.
What's that?
Oh, you've never seen the film Collateral with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx?
No, but I have it downloaded, so I'll probably listen. I'll probably watch it soon.
That's the killer, Vincent, I believe is Tom Cruise's name. It's his signature. It's 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. It
also reminded me of the Munich microdot where they do the double tap.
Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah. She also meets with the pastor, and so that they have this whole montage of her, giving him funds and helping him set up a network. Noor gets a message out that she has to switch safe houses, and as she arrives at her new house, people are arrested just as she arrives, and she manages to escape, but then sends another message that their group has been infiltrated.
It wasn't clear whether she was escaping or whether they just weren't interested in her.
I think it was more that she just got there as they were coming out, and she like moved to the stairwell just to not be noticed.
Right. Which, something else about spies wanting to blend in, I don't feel like there were too many Indian people in France in the 1940s. So
No.
she might stick out a little bit too.
Hmm.
But it never comes up, so I guess
No.
it's fine.
Vera talks to one of the wireless operators at SOE headquarters and says that I need to get a message to Virginia, or she says, oh no, not Virginia, to
Madeline.
Noor, who's Madeline.
Right. hmm And I don't remember what the message was or why she needed to keep it private. Do you
Well, it's
remember?
more of a she just didn't want to wait for the men to approve it.
Go through the whole
Yeah.
system. Yeah.
Says that tell her that she's working on a way of getting her home.
Mhm.
That was the message because she keeps encountering all this sort of stuff. So
Right.
Alphonse and Virginia meet with other SOE agents, Paul and George, who of course are dismissive of her because they think that they're planning this whole sabotage mission, and they think that a woman with one wooden leg is going to slow them down.
So it does come back a little bit. They also use the term skeds here,
Oh, I missed
which is
that.
so weird.
What
It's abbreviation of schedules.
kids? Huh.
Like
Oh,
our
yeah.
skeds are totally messed up.
Oh,
We're
that's
totally
right.
behind
You
on
did
our
say that.
skeds.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to start using that.
Despite their protestations, Virginia joins them on the sabotage run,
Mhm.
and they go and set bombs on the tracks. And as they're setting the bombs, the police come. They capture George, who is actually the wireless operator. But the bombs still go off though?
Oh yeah.
Nice big
It wouldn't be a spy
explosion.
movie without an explosion. Heck yeah.
Once they get back to their safe house, Alphonse, Paul, and Virginia are trying to brainstorm. Well, it's mostly Virginia trying to brainstorm a way to get George out. And Paul is just sort of like, no, what do you do? That's stupid. And so she says, all right, what about he's a mechanic, right? So we get to get him wrenches. And he's like, well, yes, I'm sure they're just giving out wrenches to prisoners. Like, oh, come on, shut it, idiot. Like,
I
give
was
her
like,
a
what the
chance
heck are
to
they talking about?
give her like a chance to actually present her idea instead of just shutting her down immediately.
Yeah, real mansplanation.
Yeah. So her idea, because apparently did they say the Geneva Convention or something?
Probably Red Cross
Yeah.
or possibly Geneva Convention. Yeah.
They say that something allows them to, bring parcels or items to prisoners, including a game. So they're going to sneak a wrench into a game. But Paul is resistant, and then he's like, "Oh, why not? Sure." And so there's one particular agent who I believe is the courier that Virginia met when she first got there.
Yeah, she's a young girl again with a hat.
Yeah. Who's going to be the one who brings the parcel over? They hide the tools in a Monopoly game.
That's right. Classic game.
Yeah. When she brings it, the guards decide they want to play it first. So she plays with them and wins. And finally, after
3 days later, she wins after they all hate each other.
Right. She wins, and then they give it to the prisoner. George assembles the tools, and they break out and comes to the safe house. And as they're moving between the safe house to another location, they get caught by a gendarme after curfew.
So again, hold up. Let me see your papers. Tension.
Yeah, but this has a different result, so that's why I'm okay. That's why I didn't think of it as that. It was not just tension. Okay, you're gone. It's tension, and then one of them grabs I think it's Alphonse grabs the gun, and then Virginia uses the skill she learned to slice him across the belly, and then they basically all kill him.
It was freaking sweet. Yeah.
Virginia brings the escapees to the nunnery, and we also see her, taking. I think she was told by Vera, only don't take too many at a time of these amphetamines, but she takes 3 of them now.
Yep.
The French are, tightening their restrictions, and in Paris, Noor sees someone who knows her real name, which I'm like, oh, that's never good.
Well, okay, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Initially, I thought you just met her randomly, but Noor is waiting outside the building. So my thought was she engineered the meeting because she needed someone to stay with.
Interesting.
It is risky, though.
It's very
calculated
risky.
risk. Yeah.
The friend allows her to stay with her for a few days. And then in the next scene, we see that Klaus Barbie has arrived in Lyon.
That's like such a hilarious name. It's hard to take him seriously. And he's the villain, or at least the closest thing this movie has to a villain.
Yeah.
Because he is out to get the limper,
Yeah.
is what they call her.
Yeah. And Carolyn said that he looked like a evil Matt Smith.
I don't really see that personally, but he is distinctive looking. I was mostly fixated on his name.
Yeah, all right. Also in this scene, we find out that Virginia's suspicions were correct, or her first suspicions at least, and the priest is in on it. And so Barbie does what's the word I'm looking for? It does chasten the priest and say, tone it down. You shouldn't be speaking out against the Fuhrer like that.
Yeah, it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
He's like, stop criticizing the Fuhrer. And the priest says, but it's part of my cover. It's like, screw your cover.
Dr. Chavon is meeting with Virginia and tells her that she's being hunted and that she needs to go south to...
Yeah, this reminded me of Harriet.
Yeah.
The word is out on you, Virginia.
To Perpignan, which is apparently in the south near the Pyrenees. And so we get a montage of the Nazis hanging a man outside. They also take the doctor who's brought to Klaus. I'm going to call him Klaus because Barbie just doesn't quite strike the right tone.
Strike fear into the hearts of spies everywhere.
And they torture Dr. Chavon by putting his hands in boiling water and
ow.
Yeah. Especially for a doctor, you're not going to be able to practice anything after that. And then they
that's how he makes his living.
Poke his eye out. Seemingly, I'm not sure what they were doing at that, grabbing his head.
Yeah, he was doing something to his eye. I think.
But yeah,
they do the classic scream to cut to black.
Yeah. So Virginia is burning her identity documents as Bridget, or no, not Bridget, as Philomene. Using one of the pamphlets that's looking for her to burn it. So now she's got her natural hair color again. As she's leaving, she sees that they have captured Alphonse and have him outside on his knees. And as Virginia walks away, they shoot him.
Cold-blooded.
Everyone in her cell is being eliminated. She's going to take a train to Perpignan, and the ticket officer actually recognizes her, but looks around and gives her a ticket and lets her go.
Which is a very brave move. Reminds me of Papers, Please.
Yeah.
He has to look out for himself too, but he is nice.
Yeah. She takes the train. Once she gets off the train, someone does a brush pass with her and gives her a note that says, "Follow me." Immediately, so she doesn't get caught with it, she swallows the paper or eats the paper.
Yeah, I prefer eating because it's funny.
Yeah.
But swallows is probably more correct.
Oh, no, I think she does chew it. And I mean, what?
Yes.
I mean, okay, if you were going to dispose of a paper, would you try to just swallow that or would you try to chew it?
Definitely try to chew it, but that's me.
No, same here. No, because then you're just swallowing a whole paper down. You know what? Yeah, no.
Let's not think about it.
We find that Noor's friend's husband has turned her in. And she almost escapes. She hides in a hallway as the Nazis go right past her. They go into her room and find her wireless. And she's about to escape when another guard is at the end of the hallway and they take her.
I would not consider that an almost escape. That was pretty generous.
I mean, it was more better. I thought that she was going to be captured immediately and not she's able to get away at least a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say she delays the inevitable for about 30 seconds.
Anyway, so she's being held in a room elsewhere and tries to escape out the window, but is caught. And she is interrogated by Klaus. And they say that they found her notebook and ask about Virginia. She says nothing. And
they also say that the tip-off came from inside your network, which seemed to indicate it actually wasn't the friend's husband. It was a little bit confusing.
I think it was a bit of both. It was probably, okay, they found her and then they realized who she was. And that tip-off came probably from the pastor.
Or my theory, I guess it's not really open to theory because it's facts, but my theory is that the husband was an informer.
Yeah, probably.
And he helped them locate her once they figured out that she was a spy, yeah.
But yeah, so they're going to transmit as Noor, particularly the last thing that they needed from her was coordinates for a parachute drop.
Yes.
And so they transmit some locations. So SOE gets fake Noor's message, but the wireless operator says that he feels that there's something off about the message. It's, quote, too perfect.
That's the Germans for you. Perfect always.
Yeah.
But again, also this was the imitation game and everyone having their own specific way of doing the wireless.
But Buckminster and Christopher decide, nope, you know what? You're acting on just feelings as opposed to any actual fact. So we're going to use these parachute coordinates.
Yeah, it's only people's lives at stake.
Yeah.
Whatever. Why play it safe?
Yeah. So Virginia meets with the Perpignan cell, and they're going to help her escape via the Pyrenees mountain.
Yes, this was interesting because if you recall, also from our Munich microdot episode called
Mm.
Vengeance, you can go back listen to it. One of the things that they mention is that spies don't generally travel overland like that.
Mm-mm.
They usually use transportation methods that are more normal.
Right, but she's so well known, so it'd be much harder to get her out that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we get a scene of Noor in her cell. She's quietly singing a song just to sort of keep her own spirits up.
Mm-hmm.
But as she's doing that, she can hear women being tortured and shot, and she's put on a van to a concentration camp.
Yes. Did you see which one?
I did. It's Dachau.
Yes, that's
And
right.
yeah.
Well, it's stamped on the paper, so
Oh, that's
I
right.
appreciate that
That's
little
right. It is.
detail.
Yeah. Yeah. So as she's traveling in the Pyrenees, Virginia is climbing with her wooden leg and then twists her other leg, seemingly.
That's the good one. You got to
Ah,
take care of that one.
yeah. So back at SOE HQ, the higher ups have realized that the Nazis have Noor's code.
Mhm.
Buckmaster feels guilty and
As he
is like,
should.
we've made so many mistakes. Yeah, but more than that, he just feels guilty about the whole thing. And is like, we should, what are we even doing here? And Vera gives him a nice pep talk, but then reveals that also they haven't heard from Virginia lately, so they don't know what happened to her.
hmm
But we get a nice scene of the border crossing, which is apparently a big river.
Yeah.
And Virginia is very quickly back at SOE HQ. She celebrates with Buckmaster and Vera with drinks. She hears that basically everyone besides the people who were hiding in the convent was captured or killed. Probably both.
That's right. So she's one of the few who made it back. There's a
Yeah.
little bit of selection bias there. The people that you hear from are the survivors. So it makes you think
Mhm.
there's more than there are.
Right. She also asks about Noor, and we find out that Noor's network was compromised and she is missing.
hmm
Virginia wants to be sent back, but they're like, no, you're too well known, and you lose all of your skills if you're captured.
hmm
And she makes a demand that you need to train more wireless because so many of us were relying on one wireless operator, and if that wireless operator goes down, we're all left in the cold.
That's right.
So Buckmaster reveals that the priest was the double,
Mm.
and higher ups are concerned because it was Vera who checked him out. And she's like, don't put this on me. He looked good on paper. You and I both know that he looked good on paper, and that this isn't about this. This is about, the fact of what my background is. And she says, I know that D-Day planning is coming up, and gives him an ultimatum. Basically, give me my citizenship papers so I can be fully part of the planning, or I'm out of here.
Hell yeah, you lay down the law. I must say,
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
uncomfortable when you see people playing the anti-Semitism card.
Yeah.
My possibly over-charitable reaction to the
Okay.
situation is more that they were looking for someone to blame, and Vera's an easy
Mhm.
target.
Because of those things, yes.
Yeah, also because she's a foreigner.
Yeah.
But for all of the reasons, yeah. Is it like,
Yeah.
in other words, it wasn't malicious, they were just trying to pass the buck?
I think also, well, no, because we have that example already of people,
Mhm.
even just the Christopher, with the rumors about her background and all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
So the fact that there are people like Christopher, who's seemingly second in command, who are just like, are we sure about her because she's a Jew?
Hey, I used the J word. I only implied it.
Yeah. I don't think she's claiming.
I think she is a reasonable suspicion to
Yeah.
suspect it, yes.
Yeah,
But no hard proof, which sucks.
Yeah, wow. So the very next day, she comes into her office and sees a note on her desk, which
Wait, I'm
has her
sorry.
citizenship
I'm sorry. It
papers.
wasn't the very
What?
next day. There's a note
Was
that
it?
says January 1944,
Oh, I missed that. Okay,
which
So I
presumably
don't-
it makes sense that he would have to do the bureaucracy for a while.
that's fair enough. Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, I was gonna be like, really? You got it the very next day? That seems like you should have been able to do that before if you could do that.
It's practically a
But okay, fair
miracle,
enough. Anyway, so is this the first time we see Vera in a uniform?
as
of
far
some
as I
sort?
recall, yeah. Oh, by the
Yeah,
way,
so I think now because she's a British citizen, she can actually, have a position and
mm,
not just be Buckmaster's secretary.
Yeah, she also says she wants her rank as well as her
Huh?
papers,
Oh, yeah,
too.
that's right.
Oh, by the way, we should mention that Vera is played by Stana Kanic,
Stana
Stana
Kanic.
Kanic from Castle.
Yeah. Also, a very small role in Quantum of Solace.
Mhm. Also, the voice of
Yes.
various DC superheroes on animated
And that's
form.
right. Didn't she voice Talia in like the Arkham
I
games?
believe so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But forgot that we didn't even mention that. But yes,
Yes, that's her.
she goes to a planning meeting. I think this is was this for D-Day or for just the general planning
I
meeting?
think it was for D-Day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and she meets Wild Bill Donovan, a character who we have not seen in a very long time, dating all the way back to one of our first episodes, Fleming, where, do you remember
Well,
this?
I'm gonna have to correct you. We did see him in
Oh, did we?
Fleming, but
Oh.
we also saw him again in The Catcher Was a Spy
Oh, that's right. I forgot about
when
that.
he was
Yeah, yeah.
played by Bill Pullman. Did I get that right?
No.
I always mix him
Mm.
and the other guy up.
Um,
I forget his
Jeff
name.
Daniels.
Jeff Daniels. Yep, I mixed the two of them up, even though their names really don't sound
Uh,
similar.
yeah, I was it. You could say Bill Paxton? No.
Bill Pullman was 100% what I said.
Yeah, yeah. Who plays him here, actually? Because
Some
he looked
guy.
familiar, but I didn't quite. He's not on or not on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Let me see the IMDb.
So William Donovan says their new plan is they have one wireless operator for every 3 operators or officers or whatever.
Mhm.
So that's much smaller cells.
Yeah, Matt Salinger play. Oh, wait, Matt Salinger, as in Captain America from the 1990 movie. Matt Salinger. Yes, it is.
Wow. I've never seen the 1990 Captain America movie.
Oh, it's something. Let's
I'm
just
sure
say
that it is.
it's going to be a joint operation between the SOE and the OSS, which Buckmaster refers to them as America's SOE, which in this essence they are. So Vera goes over to another room where she sees Virginia, who's operating a wireless, which she's been trained to use by the OSS. So it's been a few months since we last saw Virginia.
Yep, just when you thought she couldn't get any more talented.
Yeah. So now she's even more talented. So not only can she, form resistance movements, but she can also operate as a wireless.
Mhm.
So Vera tells Virginia Noor's real name and says that she's gonna, deliver a letter to her mother and would like her to come with her. So they go over, meet Noor's mom, tell her that she's missing, and deliver the letter. And of course, she's both sad and angry at them that no one protected Noor.
Mhm.
And we cut over to Noor in Dachau,
Mhm.
where she is put on her knees and then shot in the head, and her last words are "Liberté."
That's right. And it's
So
very dark. It's a very dark way in
yeah,
the movie.
back at headquarters, Vera and Donovan are basically singing Virginia's praises.
Mhm.
Donovan reveals that they're sending Virginia back in now that she can operate a wireless. And we see Virginia in her new disguise as a much older woman.
You can say that again.
And it looks really good.
And she's got gray
I was,
hair.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, but but it actually fits with her face. I don't know what they did, but so Vera sees her, wishes her luck, and we cut to black as we get, of course, the block of 3 different blocks of text at the end,
So much text.
telling us what happened to each of the 3 women. So apparently, Virginia was the only civilian woman to receive the U.S. Distinguished Service Cross.
Mhm.
Cuthbert was memorialized on a Congressional Gold Medal,
Mhm.
and later Virginia was again rejected to be a diplomat, but became the first female CIA agent or officer.
Right.
So Vera, after the war, she was honored by Britain, and she later investigated all of the agents who went missing, including, visiting concentration camps and interrogating Nazi leaders. Apparently, 1 in 3 of the F section agents died, and that includes 13 of the 39 female agents.
Mhm.
And we find that Noor was captured 4 months after landing in France. She was imprisoned for 10 months in Dachau before being executed.
Yeah, it really didn't seem like that in the actual movie.
Yeah. And with that, that's the end of our movie.
Cool. All right, ready for some spy fact versus fiction?
Sure. Let's get to it. So I've got one thing. Well, actually, I've got a few things. So let's tackle the thing that I said. Let's wait till spy fact versus fiction, which is about who knew about FDR's paralysis and polio.
Yes, I would like to know that.
So according to Wikipedia, it's unclear.
Well, that's no surprise.
Basically, what they say is that he avoided being seen using his wheelchair, but his disability was well known and became a major part of his image.
Ah,
And so in 1939, he did found the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, which led to the development of polio vaccines. But he didn't actually acknowledge it in any way until
Because I knew that the press conspired to not show pictures of him in his wheelchair, but I
oh yeah,
guess
here you
that
go.
was people knew about it. They just didn't want any photographic evidence of it. There
Yeah,
was a little bit
yeah.
of deniability.
Here you go. Yeah, the first time he actually addressed it or made any reference to it was when he addressed Congress in person on March 1st, 1945, about a month before his death. And he made a reference saying, I hope you'll pardon me for this unusual posture of sitting down. But I know you'll realize it makes it a lot easier for me not to have to carry about 10 pounds of steel around the bottom of my legs. So I think it was known, but not to everyone. So apparently, in this same article on Wikipedia, when a journalist said that in the 1930s, he often met people in Europe who were unaware of the paralysis. So if it was in Europe
Uh-huh.
in the 30s, it was probably known. So maybe because she was training to be a diplomat or wanted to be a diplomat, she knew this, but it might not have been common knowledge.
Yeah,
So it's unclear.
I didn't really have a problem with it. I was just curious.
Yeah, because I had the exact same thought when I saw that.
Mhm.
All right. So that's what I have for that. I will admit, before this movie, I had heard of both Virginia Hall and Noor Inayat Khan, but that's basically because they both have significant displays about them in the Spy Museum.
Mhm.
Virginia, I believe they have, I think, one of her medals and some of her equipment. They wish they had her leg, but I have no idea what actually happened to Cuthbert. I don't know if they do either. Maybe it's buried with her.
Yeah, presumably.
But that is where I also learned that her leg was named Cuthbert. So they have that display on Virginia Hall. They also have a wonderful exhibit about Noor Inayat Khan, which is basically they have the view outside of her window. I think it's supposed to be that same place where she got captured from.
Mhm.
And they have one part where basically it's all the differences between British and French culture. So like French, one of them puts cream and then tea, the other puts tea then cream. And if you did one versus the other, you'd be discovered.
Mm.
There's also harkening back to one of the parts of this movie where Vera's checking Virginia's clothing tags. They have a part where you have to look at two sets of clothing and identify which would fit more in Paris, one of which is French and one of which is British clothing.
Mhm.
So that reminded me of that when I saw this. But the biggest thing is they actually have a case which is weighted to feel the same as her wireless case.
Oh.
And so you can pick it up and see, all right, can you fake that this is just an ordinary case and walk around with it?
I bet probably most people could not.
No, because it's like 30 pounds.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's what I've got for Spy Fact First Fiction. Obviously, if you're in the DC area, check out the Spy Museum and check out their exhibit. Both of these are in their Spying in World War II exhibit on the 4th floor of the museum, which is the second floor of the museum that you visit.
And no, we are not sponsored by the Spy Museum. We just really like
No,
them.
but I do love them.
All right, so I've got from time.com, real history, women spies in World War II, also Wikipedia.
Mhm.
So Vera Atkins was born Vera Maria Rosenberg in Romania. She moved to London in 1933 and adopted her mother's maiden name. She was part of the British team which evacuated the Enigma codebreakers from Poland, where they were reverse engineered.
The ones who actually made the bomb and, started that as opposed to Turing.
Yes, that's right. Another Rogue One situation, but for imitation game. She began as a secretary. Atkins is widely believed to be the inspiration for James Bond author Ian Fleming's character, Miss Moneypenny, Secretary
I have
Town.
heard that, yes. Yeah.
After the war, she went to work for UNESCO's Central Bureau for Educational Visits and Exchanges. She took early retirement in 1961 and died in 2000. Noor Inayat Khan was born in Moscow in 1914. She talked about being a descendant of a famous Sufi teacher and musician. She enjoyed music and writing and actually had published a children's book by the time the war broke out in 1939.
Oh, that's right, because someone mentions, have you read her book?
Yes, I had forgotten that, but I thought it was interesting. One supervisor said during her training, this student has obviously worked very hard and shown interest in the exercise, but she must learn to be more discreet. After being captured, she made 2 immediate escape attempts and was trapped in solitary confinement in a prison for 10 months, shackled. I think that's in the movie, which is pretty funny that she's considered a dangerous prisoner. She clearly is not. When she was transferred to Dachau and executed, she went along with 3 other female SOE agents. A statue to her memory is erected near her childhood home in London in 2012. and her family's home was commemorated with a blue plaque in August 2020.
Hmm.
Virginia Hall was considered the most dangerous of all Allied spies by the Gestapo. The quote about, "I want to find that limping you-know-what and strangle her," is a real quote by Klaus
Oh,
Barbie. He
wow.
really said that. Her codename was Germaine, according to the sources, not Brigitte, but okay. On her return to London, SOE didn't want to send her back, but she took a job with the OSS. She arrived by motor gunboat in 1944 to France because her artificial leg kept her from parachuting.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, it probably would have shattered on impact. Her objective was to arm and train the resistance groups called the Maquis so they could support the Allied invasion of Normandy.
Hey, the Maquis!
Yeah, that's right. She joined the CIA in 1947, one of the first women hired, but she was an intelligence analyst, not an officer, according to the sources, gaining info about Soviets penetrating European countries, including France. She met and fell in love with an OSS lieutenant named Paul Goillot, or whatever, who worked for her. Yeah. In 1957, they were married. She was 51 when they got married.
Oh, okay.
She died on July 8th, 1982 in Baltimore, Maryland. And then finally, I wanted to mention the SS St. Louis. So there's a part in the movie where they're at the party where Virginia and Vera first meet. And somebody says, "There are too many Jews here." Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
And Vera gives her a look. So this reminded me of a story of the SS St. Louis. Was a 900 passenger ship that left from Germany with Jewish refugees on their way to Cuba in 1939. They arrived at Cuba and they weren't allowed to disembark because of various reasons that are too complicated to get into. So they went to the United States. But at the United States, they were denied entrance as well because at the time, the U.S. had a quota allowing only 27,370 people from Germany and Austria combined to enter the country. That quota had already been filled. President Roosevelt could have issued an executive order to admit them, but the country was hostile to immigrants at the time. For example, a Fortune magazine survey found that 83% of Americans were opposed to relaxing restrictions on immigration. So that's 83%. That's a lot.
Okay.
So ultimately, they weren't let in and had to leave. Canada's prime minister also refused to accept the passengers of the St. Louis. Quote, "If these Jews were to find a home here in Canada, they would be followed by other shiploads. The line must be drawn somewhere." That was said by Canadian Immigration Minister Frederick Blair. Ultimately, the St. Louis went back home to Germany. A few hundred of the passengers were allowed to find refuge in Holland, France, Great Britain, and Belgium, but quite a few were killed in the Holocaust later. So keep that in mind when Canada lords it over the U.S. for being so open-minded. They had their day too.
So here's something that I haven't been able to determine. Did Noor and Virginia actually know each other?
Yes, it seems that way. In my understanding.
Because I've heard stories about both of them, but never connected them as like working together. And I just browsing through both of their Wikipedia articles, I don't see any mention of the other and working with each other. So I don't know. I mean, this is something we can toss over to our friends at the Spy Museum, and they can let us know.
I can see for sure. I know a lot of this stuff is becoming declassified because it was so long ago, but maybe it's still kept secret, all the details.
Yeah, I also did like Vera Atkins specifically recruit both of them. These are three, very of the most prominent of female spies during World War II, and so I'm wondering whether it's a convenience of filmmaking to connect all of them, or if it was actually true.
I know that Vera Atkins worked with Odette Sampson, which we'll talk about next week in our microdot. That's
actually, well, just looking at Atkins's Wikipedia page, she does say she was responsible for the 37 female SOE agents, so that seems likely that she did actually recruit them. But whether or not they actually knew each other is more of a question. Yeah. All right. Actually, looking at the timelines now, Virginia Hall left France on November 7th, 1942.
All right.
So that's when she made her escape and then went over the Pyrenees and all that. And Noor Inayat Khan didn't get to Paris, seemingly...
Well, we know that she wasn't there for very long.
Yeah. looks like she didn't get to Paris until June of 1943. So it seems extremely unlikely that they worked together for any period of time.
I don't know about work together. We thought they might have met each other in passing,
Well,
but
I mean, like
thinking,
as the movie posits that they worked together and they've trained together, and that seems highly unlikely given
you
those
think so? All
timelines. Yeah, I think so.
right.
But actually, if we want to talking about SOE training, there is actually a pretty good Netflix like limited series called I think it's called like Churchill's Secret Agent,
Uh huh.
where it's about the training of the SOE, but it's also like in a weird way like a reality show where
Hmm.
people train as SOE agents in the modern day, some of whom are like even descendants of SOE agents. I watched it. It's not a long series. It's like maybe even 10 episodes, but it's pretty entertaining and just a good, further glimpse into how the SOE was trained.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
All right. So now it is time for our favorite quotes. I have a few. This wasn't the most
Hmm.
quotable movie we've ever covered. Would you like
No.
to go first?
Sure. I have one quote that which was more of a there's a touching thing where that Noor's mom tells to Noor, so don't you know yet? It's your light that lights the world, which of course Noor tells Virginia later on
It's cute.
as well.
Yes.
And Virginia repeats back to Noor's mom. Yeah. What do you got?
I have, it's my call to make. There's a part where Vera says that despite their
Oh yeah.
objections.
Hmm.
Virginia says, I don't plan to go easy on them because they're men.
That was pretty good. Yeah.
I liked at the beginning, Thomas Wayne says, we proposed the idea to Churchill. He growled a bit, but then he let us do it. Or
Churchill.
some variation there. And then finally, at the end, when that same guy says, we've done a lot of trial and error, but we're experts now.
Yeah. All right.
All right, now it is time for our ratings on a scale of 1 to 10 martinis, 1 being a terrible, the worst spy movie we've ever seen, Avengers 1997 level, and 10 being even better than Taken or No Time to Die. How would we rate A Call to Spy?
There's a change of pace. I'll go first. I'm gonna give this a 7.5 out of 10. It was solid. Was thoroughly entertained, and I thought it packed a lot
That's true, it did.
into this like 2 hours and 4 minutes or something like that. Like so, it packed a lot of story, like good story, some stuff that I'd heard before, some stuff that I'd never heard of, and it had good depiction of what an SOE or an OSS agent would actually be doing during the war.
Mhm.
Their main role is going to be recruiting other people to spread the resistance, not necessarily doing the missions themselves. So I thought this portrayal of the spy work here was good, and I mean it shows how the communication is in the field. Like so, if you and the fact that if you're your wireless goes down and several other people are relying on them, that it basically shuts down a whole network.
That's right.
And also, I liked the bit with the newspaper because I'm trying to remember. I read this book a while ago called A Handbook for Spies, and they describe one of the different methods that you use a newspaper to signal, and basically said that yeah, anytime you're actually looking for a spy, look for the people who are just fiddling with their newspapers.
And then as the newspapers go the way of the dinosaur, they're going to have to figure
Well,
something
now
out.
it's all just all right. Pass everything along through airdrop. But yeah, so 7.5, solid movie. Really enjoyed it. We could recommend. Give this a watch.
All right. Well, I guess it's me. So here's the thing.
All right, here we go.
The characters are really good. I actually liked the characters. I cared about what they were doing. I thought they were interesting, but the movie is so freaking boring. They don't do anything. They just talk and occasionally run away from the police. The movie's really slow.
All right.
So that really
Boo.
hurts it. It is informative, but I almost fell asleep a couple times.
Wow.
So I am going to give this a 5.5 out of 10.
All right. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
It's slightly above
I thought you were
average.
gonna go much worse than that.
No, it is slightly above average. It's very much a World War II
Mhm.
spy movie. Harkens back to the courier of meetings, talking about meetings, about setting meetings, passing information. But the characters were really good, and I think that makes a big difference.
Okay. I'm trying to think what is the largest disparity between the two of us, like in
Okay.
terms of our rating. And I'm just
Being
looking through
curious.
our yeah. I think it might be the King's Man,
I could
which
see
is
that.
a 4.4 martini 4.5 martini disparity between the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas everything else is usually within 1 or 2, maybe sometimes 3 martinis, but that's the biggest disparity, I think, between the two of us. Oh, I forgot to mention before that Noor Inayat Khan
Mm-hmm.
does appear in an episode of Doctor Who, the aptly named Spyfall Part 2.
Which Doctor was that? Is that after I
Jodie
stopped
Whittaker,
watching?
probably.
Okay. It must have been after the first season of Jodie Whittaker.
Yeah, it was her second season opening, where she and the TARDIS fam play spy.
I'll have to check it out.
Actually, yeah, no, parts 1 and 2, it's actually pretty good. Yeah, like the first part is more of like it's at, like they're at a casino and all that sort of classic James Bondy stuff, and the second part is more like War II-y spy action. But yeah, it's good.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for A Call to Spy. We have a microdot next week, and then we will be doing the longest day to celebrate the anniversary of D-Day. You can find us on social media at the Spy-Fi Guys under Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, I'm Zach.
And I'm Christian.
And we are the Spy-Fi Guys signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Spy-Fi Guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The theme song from this podcast is Mistake the Getaway by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Films, books, and television shows reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
This is a personal podcast. Any views, statements, or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the participants. They do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the participants may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
You can find our podcast on social media at The Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.